Is the Springfield ECHELON just creator hype, or is it a home run for polymer frame pistols? I've spent the last few weeks putting nearly 500 rounds through this pistol in my initial test. In this video, I want to break down exactly what happened. Did it break or did it keep on running? Right off the bat, the first 500 rounds through the Springfield ECHELON ran flawlessly. I did not have a single failure to feed, failure to eject, or any light primer strikes. And honestly, right out of the box, the ECHELON ran like a Swiss watch. Normally, I would try to span those rounds across a couple of different range trips. However, we had one of the last warm days this last week, and so I wanted to make sure to get as many rounds through this gun as I possibly could. So that means I ran the gun straight out of the box. I did not do any cleaning. I did not do any oiling before, just took it out of the box and then went to the range the next day. Now for this test, I used a few different mixes of ammunition. In this case, Winchester 115 and 124 grain, Blazer 115 and 124, and then Federal Black Box FMJ. Now, not only did the ECHELON handle all of these varying grain weights without issue, I also ran them pretty quickly back to back because I was limited on time. I got the barrel very hot and the slide was hot to the touch. And in this case, I did not notice any sluggishness from the pistol or any failure to return to battery. Plus, I had all of the ammo just kind of dumped into my ammo tin. And in this case, the ECHELON didn't have a single hiccup. Heck, I thought this alone was really impressive, especially just being able to cycle and handle all the different grain weights without a single issue. Now, since I bought this gun and all of the ammo with my own money, I would have loved to do a more extensive and in-depth initial test. However, let's be honest, this is a small channel and firearms and ammo is really expensive. So if you do find this video helpful, give it a thumbs up. It helps push it to the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more in-depth gear reviews coming soon. Now, I will say for me, the biggest takeaway after my initial testing was just the shootability of the ECHELON. And I do find that the adaptive grip texture does offer enough of a grip when you really grip into it, but initially when you touch it, it's not going to be abrasive. It's actually pretty soft to the touch. However, when you really dig in with your grip, you're going to get a confident purchase on the firearm. Now, personally, I would probably always opt for a more aggressive texturing. And in this case, you can order additional frames directly from Springfield with a more aggressive grip texture. I also immediately loved the texturing on the index points where my thumb and index finger tend to sit. For me, I feel like this is a must-have on every firearm, and what it allows me to do is to take my dominant hand's thumb and apply counter pressure to the frame, and it just helps control recoil better. I'd also say for a polymer framed pistol, the ECHELON shoots really well. I find that because of the low bore axis, the muzzle flip is pretty minimal, and it handles well in my hand and allows me to get those quick follow-up shots. I'll talk more about this in the negatives of this video, but I did find that when I was shooting the ECHELON, my initial shooting impressions were typically slower than I shoot other pistols, but I think that could be for a few different reasons. In terms of trigger break-in, I do think the trigger is ever so slightly smoother. However, right out of the box, it is a great trigger. Now, one thing that I noticed is if you tend to ride the trigger shoe higher, you may not fully engage that safety, or you'll hear this kind of loud click as you're trying to engage the pistol. However, because I tend to ride the shoe a little bit lower, I did not personally have any problems operating this firearm. I personally really enjoy the ECHELON's trigger. In this case, you have a very little amount of pre-travel before you hit a wall right about 90 degrees. Then at that wall, there is about a 5 to 5.5 pound break, but it is a clean break. And that reset is pretty short. It pushes you back to that 90-degree point, and it is an audible reset. As somebody who primarily plans to run this gun at the range, I did order a spring kit from Powder Precision, which should help lower the trigger down to around 3.5 to 4 pounds. While the ECHELON did win me over and it impressed me right out of the box, I will say that my initial shooting impressions were mixed. Although it ran flawlessly and I did not have any failures to feed, I did notice almost immediately how quickly my dominant hand's thumb was rubbing up against the ECHELON's pretty pronounced and sharp beaver tail. I know this may not be an issue for some, but this was something that immediately caused a pretty big amount of discomfort. I found that the knuckle bite was bad enough that I ended up having to adjust my grip to compensate. In this case, I found that if I applied more upward pressure with my pinky and my ring finger, then it helped push the web of my hand up into the beaver tail and less of my knuckle against the side of the frame. Because I was curious when I got home, I did compare the Echelon's beaver tail to the Hellcat, the Walther PDP Pro, Mechanics, and I found that the Echelon did have a more pronounced and kind of hard edge to the beaver tail than all of those other handguns. In this case, I will likely take some sandpaper and kind of smooth out those rough edges because it really did make it uncomfortable to shoot. Speaking of shooting, I noticed that I was shooting slower with the Echelon than I typically do with other polymer framed pistols. I think some of it purely could be me just learning a new platform and getting used to the way the Echelon handles, but even then my total time was still slower than what I'm used to, especially from low ready and a build drill. Being above 2 seconds feels very slow to me. I think the biggest thing contributing to those slow times was really just that first shot and finding the dot. So now that I've got the HoloSun 507 comp on there, I think this will make a big difference, but I'll definitely keep you guys in the loop, especially in my long-term review once I get closer to 1,000 rounds. Lastly, I did notice that the Echelon's out-of-the-box magazines were very stiff. So stiff, in fact, that I had a Mag Lula, and I felt like I was barely able to get 18 rounds into the magazines, even with a mag loader. So, in my opinion, there is no way you're going to be able to do it by hand. Maybe I just got some really stiff mags, and I know this will smooth out over time, but just thought you guys should be aware. Based off of my first 500 rounds through the Echelon, would I recommend it? Or more specifically, do I feel like it's just a hyped up pistol, or is it actually a home run? And honestly, I think it's a home run. Despite some of the issues that I mentioned in terms of the ergonomics and how my hand was responding to the beaver tail, I think it's a fantastic pistol. And it's one that I'm very excited to get to the range and continue shooting next time I'm there. I think because of the reliability, durability, and shootability of the Echelon, it's an awesome duty pistol that can flex into a lot of different spaces. In this case, because of the central operating group, you can swap out to smaller frames and slide assemblies, and you can carry this with the 4.0 compact version as well. Between the variable interface system and the central operating group, I think Springfield has created something awesome like the SIG P320. It just doesn't go off on its own. And although I still need to figure out the frame and the knuckle bite on the beaver tail a little bit more, once I adjusted my grip, it was a really fun gun to shoot. And for the 600 bucks that I spent on the Echelon, I think the value prop is insane. In this case, I got it during the Gear Up promotion, which means I got a range bag, I got 3 additional magazines, and I got the green dot. I would recommend the Echelon for anybody that really wants a highly versatile pistol that can flex into a ton of different applications. I think if you also purchase this firearm during the Gear Up promotion, you're getting a really spectacular deal. And even if you don't keep the Viridian green dot, like I'm not going to, you can still sell it for 100 bucks and dump that back into ammo or something else. All in all, what do you guys think of the Springfield Echelon? Would you recommend it, or would you buy something else? And if you're looking for an awesome everyday carry option, check out this video on the Springfield Hellcat Pro right here. See you guys later.